Welcome, everyone, to tonight's Candidate Forum. Before we begin, I want to invite our Spanish-speaking community members to click the button at the bottom of your Zoom screen and choose the Spanish option to hear the forum in that language. We will wait for a moment for our forum interpreter, Rosabel Rice, to translate what I've just said and switch over to the Spanish language channel, and then we'll begin.
Bienvenidos a todos al foro de candidatos esta noche. Antes de comenzar, quiero explicarles cómo entrar al foro con interpretación. Ustedes ahí en la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom van a elegir, donde sale un lobito, la opción español para escuchar el foro en este idioma. Y ahora sí me van a poner a su servidora Rosabel Rice en el canal de español para que me puedan escuchar simultáneamente. Gracias.
Welcome to the Colorado State House District 10 Candidate Forum, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Boulder County. My name is Martine Eleanor, and I am a proud member of the League, and I am pleased to serve as moderator for tonight's forum. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. For 100 years, we have encouraged informed and active participation in government and influenced public policy through education and advocacy. To remain nonpartisan, the League never supports or opposes political candidates or parties. Our candidate forums are typically held in person, with the moderator, candidates, volunteers, and audience members all in one place. But to observe public health best practices, we're participating online. According to FCC policy, candidate forums must be broadcast in their entirety, except by media reporting on events. Candidates or their staff are asked not to record this forum. The Colorado House of Representatives is comprised of 65 representatives. Representatives are elected every 2 years from the district in which they live, and they are limited to serving 8 consecutive years. Each representative district consists of approximately 77,500 citizens. District 10 covers the city of Boulder, primarily east of Broadway, and North Boulder and Niwot area. The format for tonight's forum will be as follows. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. We will then begin with questions which have been submitted electronically by the community to the League. Questions have been reviewed by our League of Women Voters volunteer screeners and will be addressed to both candidates rather than directing a question to a particular candidate. We will try to ask the candidates as many questions as time permits. Each candidate will have up to 1 minute or possibly 90 seconds to answer questions. As the moderator, I will announce the time allowed to answer each question. Our timekeeper will help you stay on track. We will finish with 1 minute closing statements. Tonight's forum participants include, in ballot order, Edie Hooten, Democrat, Kenneth J. Stickney, Republican. Now to the opening statements and questions. Again, unless otherwise noted, each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. Please watch for the timekeeper's signal at the 15-second mark and end when your time is up. If you are mid-sentence when your time is up, please promptly finish that sentence so we can move on to the next candidate. Okay, let's start with opening statements. Beginning with you, Candidate Hooten. You have 1 minute.
Thank you to you, Martine, and Mandy, and to the League of Women Voters for providing this opportunity for a candidate debate. I think this is the only one that candidate Stickney and I will be participating in. So, once again, a shout out to the League for creating a forum. I represent House District 10. I'm running for my third term. Very honored to serve Boulder County. I prioritize climate, energy issues, child welfare, and access to medical marijuana. And those are I've got bills that are landmark legislation that reflects those priorities and mobile home owner protections.
Thank you. Candidate Stickney. Candidate Stickney, you're on mute.
Thank you, Nadine and Mandy, for hosting this candidate forum. And thanks to the League of Women Voters for giving me an opportunity to participate in an open exchange of ideas about the issues that concern the citizens in our district. As was said, my name is Ken Stickney, and I'm the Republican candidate for House District 10, and I'm a 34-year resident of Boulder, 33 in this particular district. And I'm running to stand up for conservative principles, applying them to all the issues of concern to all the voters and all the residents of my district. The current state situation is in the State House is that we have basically a one-party majority in the House and the Senate, and aligned with the governor. And I think that's not the best situation for Colorado. Thanks.
Thank you. The first question will be directed, we'll start with you, Candidate Stickney. Given the current tensions for people of color and realizations by white people regarding inequities of all sorts for people of color, what can you do to create discussion and effective problem solving to address systemic racism across our state? You'll have 60 seconds.
Okay, I think one of the key issues with systemic racism is economic inequality. I believe that what we can do best is to improve the situation in communities of low income and communities of color, essentially instituting opportunity zones to encourage small business, charter schools and school choice, to give a leg up to the children of those communities, and to really foster family cohesion and togetherness. And I think that's the key to eliminating racial injustice.
Thank you. Candidate Hooton, same question, also 60 seconds.
Systemic racism is one of the foundations of our nation. It is going to take more than platitudes about how we address the great inequalities that exist, that have been built over several centuries to disenfranchise minority members of our country and in Colorado. So I think where we start is with criminal justice reform. And we also move to equalizing the tax structure. So it's not just the unearned income that gets all the benefits, but that the employed also get the same benefits.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with candidate Hooton. As our statewide population continues to increase and our water resources remain the same, potentially decreasing with persistent droughts, what do you propose for our future? You'll have 60 seconds.
Water scarcity is a huge problem for us in the West. And like food scarcity, we have to consider how we can be more frugal and efficient and responsible in our use of both food and water. And we hear that this is a grand scale problem, but we have to be able to feel empowered to use our personal use of water in a responsible way, and collectively that will make a difference.
Thank you. Candidate Stickney, you also have 60 seconds to answer the same question.
Yes, I believe with our increasing population that water resources are key to maintain a standard of living and prosperity in the state. A large majority of the water actually goes to agriculture and not so much to residents. So increasing population, I think we need to look at partnerships between the agricultural sector and Front Range, essentially, to figure out creative ways to use water. Potentially, agriculture can begin to use more water-saving strategies to reduce their amount of water, and some of that water may be used for our increasing residential population, along with notions of recycling of water, which is actually something that Las Vegas is doing because of the issues with Lake Mead. So I think there are creative ways to handle this, and everybody will still have their fair share of water. Thanks.
Thank you. The third question will start with candidate Hooton. With the high cost of living and the high cost of housing, particularly in the Front Range, including House District 10, what are your plans to create and support affordable housing and decrease homelessness and disease transmission amongst the homeless? You have 60 seconds.
Thank you. So I think the root of homelessness in this country, mental health challenges notwithstanding, is the gross disparity between those who are privileged with great tax incentives and rewards and a very low average income base that is pushing people as our economy, as our cost of living continues to increase, our wages do not keep up with it. And even if you have a household of two who are both making minimum wage, and let's just say it's 15, they can't even afford to maintain a residence. So I think that fundamentally is at the root of homelessness.
Thank you. Candidate Stickney, you also have 60 seconds.
Yeah, I think there are two questions here, one of which is the issue of homelessness, and then affordable housing is really, I think, slightly different issue. With homelessness, I think many of the issues revolve around mental health and drug problems. And I think what we need is we need more mental health services for the homeless, more drug programs to ease them off of their addiction and pass to financial independence with job training or basically bridging them from shelter situations to a paying wage that allows them to take care of their housing and food. And in terms of affordability for housing, I think the best approach is more zoning for mobile and modular homes with the decreased costs associated with them in terms of ownership. Thanks.
Thank you. For the next question, the League has invited a representative of Modus Theater to directly ask their submitted question. Here to represent Modus Theater is Tanya Jairez. We will give 90 seconds for the response and start with candidate. Go ahead, ask your question.
Hello, my question is, what are your thoughts about undocumented workers and federal relief?
So, Martine, you just said candidate, but you didn't say Hooten or Stickney. So,
Right.
Yes, candidate Hooten, thank you.
okay, thank you. So, and if you don't mind, Tanya, if you would repeat the question.
Absolutely. The question is, what are your thoughts about undocumented workers and federal relief?
So, undocumented workers pay payroll taxes. They pay into Social Security. They pay into Medicaid. They pay all the taxes that are required for an employee to pay, but they receive none of the benefits of those taxes. And so we can debate the value or, the lack thereof of undocumented workers in this country. But I will say that they make a huge contribution to our economy and as citizens.
Thank you. And candidate Stickney, you also have 90 seconds.
So first, I'd like to say that I think our immigration legislation, our immigration laws need to be vastly reformed. I think, we need to come up with better definitions of what undocumented and illegal immigrants and look to paths to citizenship, possibly guest worker designations, and to the extent that we can provide some relief for them under these economic circumstances, I think we probably need to do that. But I think without some reform with respect to the immigration laws, we have a problem that continues to exist. And clearly these people are, many of them are productive. And so I think we need laws and regulations that recognize that. And while they're not full citizens, some level of support, I think, is only right and proper if they're contributing to the economy. Thank you.
Thank you. My next question, the next question will be directed at candidate Stickney. You'll have 60 seconds to answer. Since COVID-19 laid bare the failings and systemic racism of our overall health insurance system, what do you propose to do to allow everyone equal access to affordable and effective health care in order to protect us all?
Okay, I think healthcare needs complete reform. The ACA has been very problematic with decreased access and increased costs for many people. And even the Democrats in Washington have disavowed themselves from it by putting out a bill for universal health care. Well, universal health care is single payer, and single payer leads to managed care, and managed care leads to bad outcomes for consumers. Plus, if you look at the UK, you have provider burnout and provider exit from those programs. My feeling is what we need a competitive, consumer-based plan with HSAs that are actually funded for the lower income folks, catastrophic insurance, and transparency in provider costs. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Hooton, also 60 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. So I think COVID has demonstrated the weakness of employer-based healthcare programs. When you've got so many millions of people who are now unemployed, whose health insurance was based on employment, it just shows once again a flaw in our system. We have Medicare, we have healthcare that is a for-profit model, and to disrupt that would be catastrophic. But I think we need to move towards something more equitable and away from the for-profit model to something that allows the majority of Americans to get basic health care. We are the only industrialized nation in the world who does not provide that and doesn't recognize it.
Thank you. Our next question will start with candidate Hooton. Do you support or oppose the National Popular Vote Compact, and why?
I support the National Compact, and I voted for it at the legislature. I believe every voter in this country deserves to have their vote counted. The Electoral College was established in the Constitution, but every state has the authority to determine how those electoral votes will be cast. I believe strongly that they should be cast for the candidate, the presidential candidate, who has won the most votes nationwide.
Thank you. Candidate Stickney, same question, also 60 seconds.
I don't support the National Popular Vote Compact. It's essentially an end run around the Constitution. We have a perfectly good mechanism for doing away with the Electoral College and going to a national popular vote. It's called the amendment process. I don't think it's being used by those proponents for the compact because they don't believe that there are 2/3 of the states who would ratify that. So my feeling is it's really a simple majority kind of a political move, and it goes against the whole notion of states' rights and regional differences. California has different concerns than Colorado, and we have different concerns from New York. And the biggest problem I see is in a really close presidential race, there'll be litigation about voter electoral integrity. Recounts will happen, and if you have this compact, all those states in the compact will have to redo their votes in order to determine who they're going to move their electoral votes to. Thanks.
Thank you. Next question will begin with candidate Stickney. How would you help to protect our open spaces and to increase the acreage throughout our state? You have 60 seconds.
Well, we've typically done that with bond measures. I'm a big proponent of open space. It's one of the reasons I came to Boulder 34 years ago, and I actively use it. And open space has two advantages. It makes our environment more pleasant, and it also makes our entire state more desirable with the amount of recreational land that we have. In addition to all of the national forests, national parks and wilderness areas, it makes Colorado a very desirable place, and desirable place leads to people coming here, establishing themselves, and the economy grows, and we all prosper by that. So even though land is being set aside for open space, it has great. It also allows us to maintain a biodiversity as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Hooton, same question, also 60 seconds.
Thank you. So I would absolutely agree with candidate Stickney in his response. Local communities are primarily empowered to tax themselves to purchase land for open space. Boulder County is a great model that has been replicated around the country, primarily in the Western states, purchasing ranch land, farmland for perpetuity for the use of not only their members, but for those who come in to their communities. And for all the obvious reasons for outdoor recreation, access to outdoors, and for preserving animal habitat, this has absolutely got to be a priority for us, and it has no party affiliation associated.
Thank you. Next question will start with candidate Hooton. With climate change continuing nearly unabated, what will you do to reduce harms, such as with wildfires and greenhouse gases? You have 60 seconds.
So I think we need to begin with the source of our electricity. And in Boulder County, and for communities that are served by investor-owned utilities, we are beholden to their fuel mix and what they use to supply us with electricity. So this past session, I introduced a bill that would open up a docket at the Public Utilities Commission to explore how community choice aggregation might work in Colorado. It's been quite successful in California, Illinois, New York, and what it would do is allow communities to procure their own renewable electricity and allow the incumbent utility to deliver it.
Thank you. Candidate Stickney, same question, 60 seconds.
In terms of reducing the wildfires that are prevalent in the West, I think the best solution is more forest management. We've had decades where the Forest Service strategy has been to let the vegetation accumulate on the ground, and we need to stop that strategy. We need to start cleaning up the forest to reduce the size and frequency of wildfires. With respect to reducing greenhouse gases, I'm all for renewable energy, both wind and solar and any other forms. But I think we need to go slowly, and I'm not sure that CCAs are the way to go here. If you look at California, okay, let's go back, and if we look at for the last 9 states that have implemented CCAs, 6 of them are in the top 10 for electrical rate costs. Thanks.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with candidate Stickney. What plans do you have to help us all decrease the rate of COVID-19 infections? You have 60 seconds. Excuse me, you have 90 seconds.
First of all, I don't believe that the rate of infection is a proper metric, given what we're looking at in terms of economic devastation that's going on, not just in our state, but in other states as well, and across the world. The key metric is hospitalization rates. I think we need to look at opening up our economy. And yes, we need to track cases, but we shouldn't be driven by the level of cases. And not only that, right now, we're looking at fairly low positivity rates within our state, within our county, and yet we're still the economy is still suffering under the restrictions on capacity for restaurants and other businesses. So really, we need to just watch what's happening with hospitalization rates and open up the economy as much as possible. Herd immunity is certainly a solution to some of this, but obviously with fast tracking of vaccines, I think we're going to be able to get this virus under control and move forward and recover our economic situation. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Hooton, same question, also 90 seconds.
Thank you. So I think the best way to restore our economy is by flattening the COVID curve. And the countries that have been most successful in doing that are those who have employed very basic measures of using masks to prevent the spread of the disease. It's not a complex, it is a formula. You wear a mask, you social distance, you be patient, and have to trust that the most basic, safe measures that we can use, if we all do it collectively, in a short period of time, could bring us to a place that looks like normalcy. Right now, because of our lack of consistency, whether it's students in universities, and God bless them, their kids, or adults who refuse to recognize the value of basic protection, we are going to stay in this never-ending cycle of peaks and subsiding and then peaking again. We just have to be responsible and take very simple measures.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll start with candidate Hooton. Given the health harms and dangers of fracking, what do you propose to do to curb the fracking or eliminate it across our state and yet protect those workers? You'll have 60 seconds to respond.
So I'm a very strong proponent of a carbon fee and dividend. I really strongly believe in market forces to manage the cost of many things, including the environmental cost of carbon. So I would advance that first. I also believe that with renewables, solar, wind, and battery storage improving, I mean, month after month, we've got better battery storage options, that the demand for fracking, for oil and gas will continue to drop. And the same, obviously, with coal. But, fracking is a dinosaur. And we're going to need oil and gas in the near term to help us transition to renewables. But I think it's really not only economic consideration, but definitely a market consideration.
Thank you. Candidate Stickney, same question, also 60 seconds.
Okay, first of all, I would, the characterization of fracking as inherently dangerous, I think is an incorrect characterization. Fracking has improved in terms of their safety measures, in terms of their ability to control emissions, and they continue to do so. Fracking, in fact, is responsible for a lot of the carbon dioxide declines that we've seen over the past couple of decades, simply because natural gas is so cheap that utilities are taking their coal plants out of commission and putting in place gas-fired coal plants. And that's reduced the CO2 tremendously. The other thing to remember is that 80% of Coloradans heat their houses with natural gas. And if you ask them to change to electricity, current costs are 3 times what it would cost to heat with natural gas. Thanks.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll begin with candidate Stickney. How will CCEs, or community choice energy, simultaneously provide cleaner, cheaper, and reliable energy for Colorado? You have 60 seconds.
Well, I don't believe that CCEs are the best choice going forward. We already have munis and co-ops and stockholder-owned utilities working together to provide reliable power to Coloradans. As I've said earlier, of the 9 states that have CCEs, 6 of them are in the top 10 with respect to the highest electricity rates. And what's happened in California is that with the 19 CCAs, what's going on there is those CCAs are chasing renewable energy to the extent where utilities are decommissioning their power plants, their fossil power plants, leading to a lack of resources for electrical surges, just like what has happened this summer with rolling blackouts in California. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Hooton?
Yeah, thank you. So let me just clarify what's going on in California. So the California Energy Office predicts that by 2025, 80% of Californians will be receiving their electricity from CCAs, community choice aggregation models. I call it CCE because I think it's more intuitive, and that was my bill. But it is, most communities or districts have peaker plants that can help transition high activity, electrical demand, load demand, but that is certainly not a problem in California. And the future in California rapidly is becoming investor-owned utilities providing the infrastructure and the distribution while communities procure their own renewable electric supply. And that's happening in California, in Illinois, New York, and 8 other states. And their rates are, I will argue, and the facts are there, way lower than they are from fossil and coal supplied electricity.
Thank you. The next question will start with candidate Hooton. With our economy hard hit by COVID-19, what would you insist we Coloradans and the state legislature do to improve our economy for everyone? You have 60 seconds.
we are in a situation where the value of our government is in stark relief. And the support then that the state can provide to homeowners, to renters, to keep them housed is paramount. And we have the capacity to do it. We have the capacity to increase our minimum wage. When people have money to pay for their housing, to pay for their food, to pay for their medical bills, all that money goes right back to the economy and it keeps them stable. And we are in a position, our state, and I think the governor's done a great job with this. We need more federal support, but in a time of crisis like now, this is when the value of government support really is magnified.
Thank you. Candidate Stickney, same question, 60 seconds.
So I think federal support to some extent is key. We have to make sure that that federal support is not permanent. That it is essentially geared to what we're trying to do with COVID and getting out of this economic slump. I think one of the key things that needs to be done is to stimulate small businesses, and that's with looking at lower taxes, tax breaks, and fee and reductions in fees for small businesses to let them grow. I think we had a lot of evidence from that at the national level with tax reform about how the economy grew. We need to grow ourselves out of this slump, and it's with favorable tax climate and encouraging business, and more people will have jobs. They'll be productive and have the money to keep themselves in their homes and to be able to buy food. Thanks.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with you, Candidate Stickney. This year, Colorado voters will be deciding whether to repeal or keep the Gallagher Amendment in the state constitution, listed as Amendment B on the ballot. Do you support or oppose Amendment B, and why?
I oppose Amendment B.
60 seconds.
I oppose Amendment B. And the reason I oppose Amendment B is while the proponents have indicated that they're freezing the assessment rate, homes in Colorado certainly appreciate at a regular rate, so that what happens is under those circumstances, property taxes do go up. There's no stopping them as our houses appreciate and you maintain the same assessment level. Gallagher was put in place to readjust the assessment level if the value of residential property goes up faster than commercial. And some people have argued that, well, if we freeze these particular assessment rates, then things are going to be better for commercial business. But I don't believe that's the case. I think we need, like we need Tabor, we need Gallagher amendment to continue to be in force to have a favorable tax climate that will grow the economy. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Hooton, same question, 60 seconds.
Yes, and I will be supporting Amendment B, repealing the Gallagher Amendment formula. The formula was instituted in 1982 when residential rates were skyrocketing. And but since then, 40 years forward, now the non-residential property rates are exploding, and the residential property rates have stayed very low relative to the rest of the country. And as we all know, public schools are funded through residential property taxes. And the state of Colorado has had to backfill rural communities because they cannot raise sufficient funding for their public schools.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with candidate Hooton. Do you support or oppose safe injection sites in Colorado and why? You have 60 seconds.
I support safe injection sites because they provide a safe place for users, and they remove the use of needles and injections from public spaces, and safe injection sites have supervision for the users. And we can argue all day long about whether or not users should be condemned, but they exist. And it is a health crisis in this country. They need a safe place, and they need a place that does not involve alleys or public property like parks. And it makes sense, and it's a safety measure. It's not a moral issue, in my opinion.
Thank you. Candidate Stickney. Also 60 seconds for this.
So in terms of safe injection sites, places where addicts can use a clean needle and dispose of it in that environment, it sounds like a good idea. What I would like to know is exactly if you put these sites in place, will people who are out on the street using actually bother to come to them? So I think that we need to identify that there's actually a demand for this from that population. And I think, again, really we're treating the symptom instead of treating the disease. And I think really the key is to have more mental health services in place to help people beat their addictions, because that's really the solution that we're looking for. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question I'm going to ask, I see here, we have, do you support or oppose defunding law enforcement in Colorado and why? 60 seconds, we'll start with candidate Stickney.
So the question is defunding police in Colorado, is that correct?
Do you support or oppose defunding law enforcement in Colorado and why?
No, I don't support defunding law enforcement in Colorado at all. I was in favor of the reform bill that was passed this past session, and when it finally eliminated some of the incredibly punitive civil liabilities that we're putting on police and came down to something reasonable. Police are incredibly important with respect to serving the community in terms of domestic issues, traffic, robberies, and other crimes. Frankly, they're actually still in a situation where they're stretched too far with respect to the resources that need to be addressing problems. So I'm definitely not for defunding the police.
Thank you. Candidate Hooton, same question, also 60 seconds.
Thank you. And I also do not support the defunding of police, but I do support allocating a lot of the funding for public protection dollars to programs that can work with law enforcement to address many issues that they are expected to respond to that really require a mental health professional and not direct law enforcement. So I think there are a lot of great models around the state, around the country rather, that are conjoining law enforcement with mental health professionals to evaluate the crisis or the call that they're responding to and have the appropriate response. And it doesn't always require law enforcement. It often requires a mental health professional.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll start with candidate Hooton. What steps will you take to ensure that the interests of various diverse groups are considered in your decisions? This includes racial, cultural, economic diversity, as well as diversity of thought, political views, rural-urban considerations, and many others. You have 90 seconds to answer this.
So as a legislator, I feel very fortunate to belong to a caucus that is extremely diverse. So before November, we have 41 members in our House, 10 of whom are Latino, and we've got 6 African Americans, we've got 6 LGBTQ members, and we are a very diverse caucus. And when issues come up that directly impact those communities, the very first thing that I do as a colleague is go to them and say, you know, what is your take on this? It impacts your community more than any other community. Where do you stand on this issue? I did that with, Senate Bill 217, which was the police reform bill that we passed. I had a lot of constituents who reached out to me with their opinions and concerns, and I went right to the prime sponsor of the bill, Representative Leslie Herod, and I said, Leslie, I'm just telling everyone I am following your lead because you know better, your community knows better than anyone else how to best craft legislation and policy that supports your community and responds appropriately to a crisis.
Thank you. Candidate Stickney, you also have 90 seconds.
So if I'm elected, I'm at the State House, I'm willing to talk to anybody about anything. I would be perfectly willing to talk to the other side of the aisle with respect to people who have unique perspectives on legislation or issues that affect particular groups. I would obviously have an open door for citizens in my district, listening to all opinions and listening to all types of groups with respect to their needs. That's why I ran, because of dialogue, to have that dialogue. And obviously I have certain principles and opinions, but I'm willing to listen to anyone with respect to their opinions, with respect to any legislation issues that would come up at the State House.
Thank you. All right, we're nearing the end of our program. We will now transition to closing statements. You have 1 minute. We'll start with you, Candidate Stickney.
So I think this is a really important election that's happening. I think both in Colorado and nationally. And I think voters are faced with a choice. Essentially, what we have is, because we've got basically a one-party situation with respect to the State House, and it's a progressive party, we have a consistent consistent execution of progressive agenda. And to my mind, that's not the best for Colorado. We need to maintain a favorable tax environment. We need to maintain a good mix of energy solutions within the state, and as well take care of our citizens. If voters want to go in the other direction, I think we're headed towards the situations in states like New York and California with slower growth and other issues. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Hooten.
So I'm very honored to serve House District 10. It has been an incredible privilege. I would prioritize climate. Everything depends on a healthy climate, and I think we are in a crisis now. So I would prioritize legislation, as I have in the recent past, and I certainly will in the next 2 years. I'm the vice chair of the Energy Environment Committee. I also am incredibly concerned about keeping people housed. So I ran in the past 2 years 3 bills to protect mobile home owners, and they've all been successful. I've been running and will reintroduce legislation to protect or to support homeless youth providers and providers of children advocacy centers who support kids who are sexually abused and assaulted. We absolutely, as a society, have to protect our most vulnerable, including the earth.
Thank you. Thank you very much. On behalf of the League, I would like to thank our candidates, not only for their participation in tonight's forum, but also for their participation in the democratic process. Running for office and serving as an elected official is hard work, and we really appreciate your efforts. Thank you to our League Forum candidate volunteers, our League Candidate Forum volunteers, including the League's invaluable Operations Director, Mandy Nuku, Josephine Porter, Peggy Leach, Elizabeth Crow, and gracias to our interpreter, Rosabelle Rice. This forum will be available for viewing. Please go to the League's website, lwvbc.org, for the YouTube link. And finally, thanks to the Boulder County voters participating tonight as viewers. It's up to all of us to make sure we respect and work to protect our democratic processes. Too many people have suffered and succeeded in the struggle to win these rights for us not to use them. It starts with being an informed and active voter. To check out other important issues affecting our community, check out our League voter information website, vote411.org, for all the election information you need. The League of Women Voters of Boulder County works throughout the year to help empower voters and defend democracy. If you want to lend your time and skills to encourage civic engagement for all people in a nonpartisan manner, please join us. All the information you need is at www.lwvbc.org. Thank you again and have a great evening.